What was that feeling like seeing the Grizzlies draft Ja Morant, but understanding that meant the end of the Mike Conley era?
I mean, by then, I feel like Grizzlies fans had already mourned what was Grit and Grind. He was the last piece that remained. So it felt incredible. I mean, it was like, honestly, I would say, oh, it was bittersweet. We had already done that. And, Mike was such an important part of our team, but it's like for his career, for the sake of him, it's almost like you want him to be able to go somewhere else. And like, he didn't fit what Memphis was doing. And it was cool that he got to play with Jaren for that little bit. And, sort of be the final send off for those guys. It almost felt fitting because he was there for the longest. And yeah, it was unreal. I mean, how many teams get to just completely fast forward the rebuild the way that the Grizzlies did by getting that number 2 pick? It was electric. I wish I was like, oh, it was great. I loved it. 10 out of 10.
I feel it though, because it was kind of the same way for me at least. Well, Dwayne Wade had like a whole final tour thing, but I was also kind of ready to move on after that season. Bam had been not breaking out. All right, so people who aren't Heat fans didn't have this experience. Like Bam's rookie year, he'd come into the game, do something you'd never seen before in your life, and then Spo would take him back out and put Hassan Whiteside in, who everybody hated.
Like Steve Kerr this season.
So I feel the Mike Conley thing. I was also a big Mike Conley fan. We'll get into him in the next segment, but
but like that's not to say that when we lost him, it wasn't like like I cried. There were so many tears shed. I don't know if y'all saw his like video we did where when the players that have been with the franchise for a while, they write a Players Tribune letter or they make like a video. His video, it starts off and he's like, "Dear Memphis, can you believe it's been 12 years?" And like, as soon as he said that, I was just like, on the floor. So yeah, I'm like, oh, it was cool. But like, I was so sad to lose him at the same time.
I completely understand. 12 years is crazy. So do you have a specific moment from the era that's your absolute favorite?
From just the Grit and Grind era as a whole.
Just as a whole?
Like from Grit and Grind? Is that your question? Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. I mean, what comes to mind instantly is the Zebo, Blake Griffin, the choke game. Like that, I was there. I was in, the crowd, and being there for that was truly remarkable because it was game 6. I want to say, I'm really bad at years, but I want to say like 2013. The first round, we're playing the Clippers. This is a team who we did not like. They'd jawed against each other for a while now, especially Zebo and Blake Griffin. And, Grizzlies fans couldn't stand Chris Paul. They couldn't stand Blake Griffin. And so this moment happens where they both sort of fall to the ground and everyone's like, hold on, what's going on? And like, you see the replay and Zebo just completely has Blake like in his hands on his throat. Blake is like, ah. And then you like realize, you look up at the Jumbotron and you realize, oh my God, the Grizzlies are about to win the series. So it's like just this surreal, like hilariousness of that moment. And then you're like, oh my God, we're about to win. So then this really cool thing happens where obviously Zebo gets ejected. You can't choke someone in an NBA game. Draymond learned that the hard way this season. But yeah, and Zebo just was kind of like mad at first. And then in a moment, he just like was like, whatever. And he starts skipping out of the arena and flings his famous headband into the crowd. And minutes later, there was more tension between the teams, and Chris Paul actually got ejected. So you have all of the excitement riding off of everyone screaming Zebo, the crowd chanting Zebo's name, and then minutes later, Chris Paul, who everyone also couldn't stand, gets ejected, and he just starts shaking all the players' hands because the series is over. As a basketball fan, like it doesn't get any better than that.
So I do want to ask more. So you mentioned being able to skip a rebuild, and that reminded me of kind of this season, to where I don't know how it is in Memphis. You could probably speak to that a little bit, but just with the panel you're on right now, Memphis is a team we're watching because they have a lot of young, talented players that we like. That we do remember they're also one of the best teams in the league when they're healthy.
Yeah.
And they're going to be having a high draft pick this year. But specifically, I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on Gigi Jackson. I'm not going to take credit. Lou wanted your thoughts on Gigi Jackson.
Yeah, Gigi Jackson. I mean, listen, this season, like as you're talking about, we have the best team, but then also this depth. We didn't know this depth existed until all of these guys came out. So you talk about Gigi Jackson, you look at someone like Vince Williams Jr. These are guys that were at the end of our bench. Gigi literally didn't get his first like real shot. I mean, he would have eventually, but in this game where Desmond Bane actually injured himself, the Clippers got to choose which Grizzlies player shot the technical because Desmond Bane couldn't shoot the technical. So they were like, hey, how about Gigi, this kid that just turned 19 at the end of the bench that hasn't played? And ever since then, Gigi's just been a part of our rotation. I mean, Gigi, it's really cool because when you go from one era to another, it does feel like this depth. But what's cool is it also seems like this new era, this Grizz next gen kind of play on G and G. I don't know how much we do that anymore. There hasn't been much to celebrate this season, but they really like took a lot of themes from Grit and Grind without just completely like stealing it. You know, there is that grittiness, there is that fire. There's obviously everyone saw Ja and Dylan be all silly and excited and dancing. And you know, Gigi is a guy who has that edge, who has the chip on his shoulder. His number is 45 because he was the 45th pick in the draft. And he's awesome. I mean, this is the youngest player in the NBA, and I'm watching him put up 30 something points a night like that. That's really all I need to see. He's incredible. He's doing things that no one's ever done at his age. And like, he's shown so much self. I'm sure the reason you might not be a fan of his is because of maybe like, I don't know, the way he was portrayed in college, but he's shown a ton of self-reflection and been like, I was not a coachable player. I probably wasn't the best teammate. And he's here and he's killing. And I am not thankful for injuries, but I am thankful that we were saved from having to watch David Roddy and Jake LaRavia have minutes over Gigi and Vince Williams.
No, 100%. When these injuries happened, we talked about them like just the final nail in the coffin. Ja gets hurt. He's after missing so much time with suspension, guys. Your season started with Steven Adams getting hurt and being out for the season. And it was just like a parade of just more injuries, more season-ending injuries. And we talked about it, like guys like Gigi and Vince having that opportunity that they wouldn't have had. And they really taken advantage of it. And it's cool because those guys that are going to be crucial pieces for the next gen of the next year when they're ready to compete, you wouldn't have found them. You wouldn't have known that they were right there in the wings. And it's awesome, man. Vince has been one of the best 3-and-D guys in the NBA. He's developed some on-ball chops and has some opportunity to show his game. And it's so cool to see because, oftentimes those guys don't get an opportunity at all. And they really take
and those guys certainly do not play for the Memphis Grizzlies ever.
Exactly. You guys have had like a million guys go through there, like you mentioned David Roddy, but guys get their opportunity and just not have anything to show for it, or not perform well enough. But we're big fans of those guys.
Yeah. Finding answers within the roster on a down year is like the silver lining to I guess all these injuries, because we saw in the few games that Ja played, as long as he plays, you guys have a chance. It doesn't matter who's on the floor with him. But now we know who Bane has become recently. Jaren, we know who he is, but now you're taking these pieces, and it's not like they're doing things that they can't do when Jaw's on the floor. Obviously, the ball's not going to be in their hands as much, but they are still going to have this freedom, and it's in positions of need where like you said, you've lacked the depth. You've tried the David Roddies, you've tried the Jake LaRavias and etc. to now
Zaire Williams.
The Zaire Williams, the Kenneth Lofton Juniors, and now you get a chance to, it's basically like a fast forward on like a mini rebuild. Sucks that they're hurt, but next season with the high draft pick, having a chance to round out your roster and really making a run at it again, because the talent, as long as Ja plays, Memphis is a title contender.
Yeah, for sure. And Desmond Bain just came back. Actually, Brandon Clark, I will definitely tune in as soon as we're done recording. Brandon Clark is back tonight. Huge. We didn't have him all season. And just those guys playing at the end of the season, you might think like, oh, like it's a dead season, but it's so cool for them to get that run together. And just for next season, like these guys that are already proving so much and showing these amazing flashes, like when there isn't as much pressure and responsibility on them, which there won't be when you have Ja Morant, I'm really excited to see like how that looks. And that's the depth going in, like at the beginning of the season, the depth was like the worst part of our team, and now it's looking like one of the more endearing parts. So yeah, it's definitely something to celebrate.
And I'm interested in seeing obviously Ja Morant, but the Grizzlies have the reigning defensive player of the year and the one from the year before, and we didn't really get a chance to see too much of them this season.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited for that. Plus Ja Morant, plus you got these young guys, plus whoever the high draft pick is. I feel like I'm gonna watch a lot of Memphis Grizzlies next season. I've watched unexplainable amount of Memphis Grizzlies this season, and so next season
I feel you there. Yeah, I feel you. There was like a really fun period when like everyone was hurt, and then you just started to realize like, holy shit, these guys are actually really good. And but now it's like, okay, we know y'all are good. I'm gonna give you a mysterious injury, and let's let this guy that we just pulled from the G League like audition. So yeah, it's kind of what the season's become. It's like you've got GG going off, and then like 10 guys you've never heard of, but no, that's an exaggeration. But yeah, it's definitely like, I mean, the Grizzlies, it's so weird to see like you go from, one of the top teams that's talked about to one of the bottoms, but then you see the trend just of the impact of Ja Morant. This is something we've never experienced as Grizzlies fans. Like I'm on my phone and Bleacher Report and ESPN are posting about Gigi Jackson playing right now. And obviously like one of my jobs is I get to post on Bleacher Report, but I'm not working right now. And, I can post Jacob Gilyard, who is no longer on the team, RIP. Shortest player in the NBA. I can post Jacob Gilyard and my bosses aren't going to side-eye me because people care about the Grizzlies. Like Ja turned this team that even when we were great, we are talking about the grit and grind eras, we were not being posted by these websites. It was like the anti was posted on these websites, right? And that's kind of what made it so special. But it is so cool that like people are paying attention to us even when these guys are out, and it's just like it's such a testament to how much Ja Morant like shifted the way the Grizzlies are perceived and talked about.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Playoff Hour. I'm Kenny. I got Frankie with me. Frankie, how you doing today?
Doing great. How about you, Lou?
I'm doing good, man. Everybody's doing good.
And if you couldn't tell by now, you want something a little different, we got a special guest today. 100% your favorite Memphis Grizzlies fan, if you're anywhere on social media, from Bleacher Report. Ladies and gentlemen, we got Molly Morrison with us. Molly, how you doing today?
I'm great. I'm excited to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
And we did want to get into really quick, because you have an interesting story where you started off anonymous. So I kind of want you to walk the audience through that.
Yeah. My origin story on NBA Twitter is definitely unique. I got on when I was 12, 13. I think like you're supposed to be 13 when you get Twitter, so legally I was 13.
Sure.
Like that's what we're gonna roll with. But I started this Grizzlies fan account, exactly, and it was called Made in Memphis. It had a profile picture of Tony Allen flexing. It was around the time, I'm 12, 13, so it's 2012, 2013. The grit and grind era has begun, and it's at its peak. It's approaching its peak. It was all peak, but I was tweeting on Molly Morrison, and my friends at school in middle school were like, Molly, we don't care to see you tweet 20 things about this game. And I was like, so valid, so fair. So I started this fan account, and I didn't like necessarily mean for it to be anonymous, but it was, and it stayed that way. So I had this account through, it was like with me through all of these insane highs through the playoffs. And like one day I just realized, like, wait a second, this is, it wasn't like this, but it became the most followed Grizzlies fan account in Memphis, which, you know, is not the same as the most followed fan account in somewhere like LA, but it probably at the time had like 9,000 followers, which Twitter has exploded since then. So that was a lot. It still is a lot, but you know, I'm sure there's lots of Grizzlies accounts that have more than that. And no one knew who I was. No one really asked. It was just one of those things. You know, it's funny. It's like the original like Scotty Barnes muse. These like those accounts. It was like the player profile. I mean, no one's asking who it was. I was a teenage girl, and yeah, it was kind of big, and people would talk to me and be like, "Hey, man, like, so true, man," and whatever. And I wasn't trying to sound like a dude. I think people just saw someone talking about sports and, you know, assumed I was a guy. Right. Which is like, it was unintentionally a very fascinating social experiment as well, because I didn't really face any negativity like at all for so long. And then when I was 18, I had gone to college. And I, you know, went through my whole freshman year. This was, so you talk about, this was like the death of grit and grind. This was the season before we drafted Ja. And, you know, I was not tweeting as much as I was tweeting before, right? I was a freshman in college. I had to live my life. But when I would go on and tweet, I just felt so weird. I was like, what am I doing? Like, these people don't even know who I am. And I just started to feel like sort of like I was lying to people, even though I wasn't. So I decided to tell people who I was the summer after my freshman year of college. And I did not expect that many people to care, but it was huge. I think my gender shocked people as much as my age. I was 18, so which meant these people had been interacting with a literal child for some time. But yeah, it was really my start in NBA Twitter. Which is weird because like when I did the reveal, which was, I wrote this little story. I was like, surprise, I'm a girl. It's a girl. My name is Molly. I'm 18. I didn't even like tag my personal Twitter account. Like, I couldn't fathom that people would want to follow me, like, still, even though I was doing this. I was just like, hey, just so y'all know, this is me. I'm going to keep tweeting on this account, whatever. And then like, I just kept tweeting on my normal account as I had been. But I guess now that people associated me with this Grizzlies account, people started to follow it. And that became a place where I could talk about not just the Grizzlies, but the NBA. And that's what led me through this path that I'm in today.
I couldn't imagine being that young and on Twitter, because even now at 31, I don't have like a really that interesting story. I would just tweet during Heat games, and Heat fans are very dramatic people, and I'm not. People gravitated towards me for not being dramatic, but even still, I get annoyed sometimes. So I couldn't imagine being a literal child and dealing with that type of attention.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like, I was protected by being anonymous, which like, I can't imagine like doing what I did and being online like that as a girl, a young girl. And like, because of that, I'm so much more hypersensitive to like when I see, you know, teenage girls on NBA Twitter, like I feel like it like personally just like pains me because like I see them going through things that like I didn't have to go through. And I hate that I didn't have to go through that because I was anonymous, and that's the only reason. And it just like goes to show like people assume, I get replies all the time now like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, like you're a girl. And I'm like, I was the most followed Grizzlies account before anyone even knew who I was. So
show them the credentials.
She was born with the grit and grind. She's about the action, man. Come on.
Literally, I was there, but no. NBA Twitter has also changed a lot.
Yeah,
100%.
It's very toxic now.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty bad out there, but you know, you just gotta like separate it from reality, and then like life is like a lot better.
Yeah.
My problem is I have a day job and I kind of do whatever I want there because like I'm productive. So I'm just on my phone bored all day. If I told both my co-hosts, if it wasn't for that, I would like literally delete the app and never use it. But I'm on there 24/7 because I have nothing else to do. But we're gonna get into the actual team, the grit and grind teams. So first we're gonna start with Mike Conley. Now, my experience with Mike Conley, this is around the time where like I was a teenager. I still pretty much only watch basketball and basketball entertainment stuff. But back then, I was really obsessed with basketball. So I watched all levels, all kinds of leagues, whatever it was. So Mike Conley and Greg Oden, for anybody who may not know, they were high school teammates before they were teammates at Ohio State. And they had a game on, I think, ESPN2 against Eric Gordon's team, who Eric Gordon was incredible in high school. One of the best players that had ever been seen in high school. They had a game against each other. That was like real big, like to this day, like this classic high school basketball game. And I saw that game live. Really, I was following Greg Oden, but unfortunately, he had the injury stuff in the NBA. Eric Gordon got to the NBA. He became like a role player.
Injuries too, though.
Yeah. But Mike Conley, from that time, was one of my favorite NBA players because I love point guards, especially the pure, like, smart point guards. So I'm going to go around first, and I'm sure you have the most to say about him, Marty. So I'm going to go to Frankie and Lou first about their experiences just watching Mike Conley.
Yeah, man. I wasn't into I've never really been into high school hoops as much, but I once they get into college, especially back then, I was like, all right, I hate Ohio State, but I got to watch this guy. It's Greg Oden. He's one of the biggest hype players. And I'm like, Mike Conley's pretty good, man. These guys pretty fast. So you heard all these things, son of a track star, Olympian, and Mike is just fun. I was a lefty point guard. He was a lefty point guard. He was fast as hell. I was not fast. But he was fun to watch, just so smart. And just like seemed like the humblest dude, real easy to root for. I've always wanted Mike to win. It was very easy to like attach myself to those Grizzly teams in that era. And like, we're Heat fans, it's easy to watch the Western Conference and just sit back, wait. And that era, we were just waiting to see what was happening. And man, Mike was just a dog on defense. I love defensive point guards. He was all around, like he could do a little bit of everything. His floater game was so good, was so fun to watch. And yeah, man, he still is. He's still productive as hell. Big part of why Minnesota is as good as they are is because of his leadership and stability. And I'm always going to be a Mike Conley fan forever. Love that guy.
And Lou, I know you also loved Mike. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So during this time, obviously, it was the peak Heat, and you were watching different teams, but just watching Memphis started making me appeal to them because they had that little bit of edge to them, hence the name Grit and Grind.
Yeah, Grit and Grind, Heat culture. There's kind of
there's a similarity.
It's like cousins, sort of.
Yeah, they're cousins. So that was my second favorite team. So I'd start to watch them, and Mike Conley in specific. Talk about like a player who generally did not care for his own personal statistic the way that the team played basketball. It was, to him, still to this day, it's all about what can he do to make the team win a basketball game that's not being done. And he just perfectly morphs into whatever they need at that given game, whether it's point of attack defense, whether it's helping, whether it's shooting the tray ball a little more, whether it's getting to the floater, whether it was the high entry passes to like a guy like Marc Gasol, or the low entry passes, obviously, to a guy like Zebo during these times, and just making sure everybody felt that they can perform at their highest level, and he would figure out his own game. One of the most unselfish players, even when you hear him talk and interviews and throughout the course of his career, you can just tell like he's genuinely just a great human being, and one of the easiest players to root for. By far, one of the most underappreciated point guards of the generation he's part of two generations. They kind of morphed into one, but regardless, one of the most underappreciated point guards.
Yeah, we talk about him being like this great guy. Just keeping in mind, he got drafted in 2007, and he still has no technical fouls in his career. That kind of tells you everything.
Crazy.
Well, he got one and they rescinded it.
Crazy. Yeah, I was gonna say.
The ref felt bad. So yeah, he does have no technical fouls, but
He has less ejections than Draymond Green had in 3 minutes today. Anyways.
Oh my god.
But yeah, Marty, so when he got drafted, you were like what, 5 or 6 years old? So you really grew up.
Yes.
I really want to know about your experience. I'm assuming in Memphis, watching him growing up.
Yeah, I mean, you guys covered like everything in the basketball sense, but like Mike was our general, right? He was the conductor, is what like fans called him. As y'all said, he did everything on the court that mattered, that contributed to those wins. And you said, he was so undervalued and underrated. It's funny because for so long he was called underrated that it became almost like at this point, like, okay, when are we gonna? It's like everyone was like, Mike Conley is the most underrated guy in the league, but he was because when you think of like a point guard, contrast him with Ja Morant, right? Opposites. Ja is also unselfish and helps his teammates, so not in that way, but just in the way that he's flashy. He's doing those things, those Russell Westbrook things. That Mike Conley never did. So Mike Conley wasn't on SportsCenter. Mike Conley wasn't on ESPN, but he was doing those things that contributed to the win. More importantly, because what made the city fall in love with these guys was really like just a blend of who they were and what they meant. He was that center. He was the calm, what within that core four of guys who had really strong personalities and he was always just the guy that was there. Kind of connected everyone, and he was the best. We always like say when he's arguing a foul, which is funny because we actually ended up playing him in the playoffs with the Jazz, which is like so weird to think about. And if he's arguing a call, it's like, oh shit, like he's right, because Mike Conley, he's the one player that does not lie. Like it's a thing. So yeah, just a really great guy, great player, great teammate, and he was there through it all. He was the first one to come and the last one to leave, and I think that stays with a lot of people in Memphis, and he's always going to be in our hearts. We love him.
Yeah, I always do wonder like about the impact the player had on the city, because I know we mentioned on the show a lot about growing up in Miami as Heat fans, but just the parallel, because the topic, which I'm never going to get into on this show, like the statue thing, whatever, with LeBron, whatever. But like growing up in Miami, Dwayne Wade's fingerprints were all over the community. It wasn't just basketball. It was just Dwayne Wade he'd feed families. He'd show up to people's houses in the projects and just really help the community itself. And so Mike Conley seems like that type of player also. So is there anything you could speak to as far as that goes?
Yeah, that's actually a really lovely question. And, I would say Mike Conley, but like genuinely the four of them were so involved in the community. Mike Conley, Zach Randolph, Tony Allen, Marc Gasol were all so active in the community. Memphis has St. Jude. They were at St. Jude. Zach Randolph was paying people's electricity bills. They did so. I mean, Mike Conley probably won the community assist award multiple seasons in Memphis. They did so much, and that is part of what I talk about when I say why they meant so much, because Memphis is a city that in a lot of ways like has always been it's a blue collar city. And these are Zivo said once, it's a blue collar city, I'm a blue collar player. And it was just this marriage of people that necessarily other people didn't believe in, but these guys genuinely took the time to invest in the community, be a part of the community, really see people, hear people, help people. And it was beautiful. It was incredible to be a part of. I think that's a great question because it's so important, and it's the stuff that doesn't get talked about a lot.
No. Yeah, Mike's a 4-time sportsmanship player of the year.
There you go.
Just awesome person, and like
yeah,
like nobody ever has. I've never heard anyone say anything bad about Mike Conley.
No, never. And I talk about all this stuff, but as a player, like you mentioned me growing up with him. I mean, just his leap from when I first started watching the Grizzlies to the end, like this guy was like, you wanted to feed him. I mean, along with Zach Randolph at the end of a game, like he was hitting the clutch threes. We called him literally Clutch Conley at a point because he was so good. So yeah, y'all said a lot about his game, but he really did improve and like make the team his own through his time.
Tony Allen. Now, me, Frankie, and Lou, off camera before we started the show, we were talking about Chicago basketball players and the toughness they bring. And usually when you bring up grit and grind, you bring up Zach Randolph. Obviously, he had that edge, but he was also the team's best player. But I feel like Tony Allen gets lost a lot. There's also a thing, Wally, like on the show where, especially me and Lou, we kind of always get into how much we hate how little guards get as far as credit goes for their defense. And Tony Allen is somebody who always comes up with us.
First team.
One of the best defenders we've ever seen. And it's just he did make the first team, but I don't know if he ever got any real defensive player of the year consideration, but I would have definitely gave it to him if I had a vote. But I'm gonna go to you first this time about just Tony Allen and what he meant to the team and the community.
Oh my God. I mean, talk about just you don't know what's gonna happen when you're watching Tony Allen on the basketball court, and it's just the most beautiful mess of chaos. I mean, Kobe Bryant said he was the toughest defender that he ever faced. Kevin Durant said a similar thing. He might have said it was the toughest, or I think he did. It doesn't get realer than that, like all of the awards in the world. But when you have the greatest saying that you are the toughest defender, I mean, he was just going to lock you down. Like, this was a guy that like, he was going to torture you while doing it. He took genuine joy in shaking his opponent. I mean, this is the guy who had an OKC paper calling Kevin Durant Mr. Unreliable. Like, genuinely, he was just that good, and he was gonna miss layups. He was gonna dive into the stands. He was gonna take a shot that you're like, Tony, what the hell are you doing? But that was just a part of the Tony Allen experience, and it was wonderful. And that was the identity, right? That was woven into grit and grind, was the defense. It was the ugly, it was the defense, it was the grittiness, and Tony brought all of that. He's a legend. And I can't say enough. I mean, these are the players that we don't see get the big contracts anymore, right? The players that cannot shoot for shit. It's all about spacing. But it was beautiful to watch, and he's a legend, for sure.
Yeah, just because again, like my favorite types of players are defenders. I do miss that era though, where like a guy could just lock in on being a defender, and that's kind of it, because you could really maximize what he did on that end. And you have great defenders now, but they also relied on the shoot, and they have other stuff to think about. With Tony out, he just guard the best player and let that be it, and just do the best you can in that way. But I'm gonna go to Frankie first, because we usually don't have a chance to talk about these types of players with Frankie, because Frankie has stuff to do a lot of times. But what do you have on Tony Allen, Frankie?
The grind father, man.
Yes, there you go. I can't believe I didn't say it.
I was waiting for you to, man.
It's so obvious. It's like, this is why I need you guys to go before me. I need y'all to get me like hype up. So yeah, absolutely.
I've always loved Tony Allen because I remember him when he was in the Celtics, and it was him and Gerald Green. And Gerald Green, we've talked about him being one of our favorites too. But Tony Allen was just one of those scrappy guys, dug in defensively, always, champion with the 08 Celtics. Scrappy as can be, like the definition of a scrappy basketball player. Would lock you up, would talk shit in your face, would get the crowd going. Molly talked about like diving into the crowd, into the
for the loose ball,
diving on the floor, deflections, steals, like just one of the greatest defenders, and he was undersized. Like people forget how small he was. He was 6'4", 213, but he was strong as can be. Was great at guarding guys on the perimeter. I remember him giving Chris Paul fits, just bothering him how big he was and strong he was. And it was, we just talked about Mike, but that was like one of the best defensive backcourts in the league. Tony was loud because he was gonna let you know about it. He was gonna let you know what you're shooting tonight. He was gonna talk all this stuff. Mike was gonna be quiet. Mike was gonna get his 2 steals, play great defense, and let Tony and Zebo do all the talking. But you talk about the emotional leader. It was him and Zebo, man. Just bring that toughness and what a fun player to watch. And he was always easy to root for because there wasn't many guys like him in the league, and especially like right now, there's really who's an all defense guy, just defense guy like that, especially on the perimeter. League was fun having guys like Tony Allen.
Yeah, I mean the grit and grind was really like fighting to contend when the league was drastically changing. It was like the dying breaths of like that old type of basketball. And I think like it was because the Warriors, one of the last years of grit and grind was a series against the Warriors, and they had a genuine shot to win that series. I still think they would have if Mike Conley's face hadn't broken, but I'm also a homer. But I don't know where I was going with that. I got too wrapped up.
No, for sure. No. You talked about that, but like they were the antithesis of like what the league was becoming. They were the slowest paced offense. They were last in 3-point attempts every year, and they were just like, we're gonna go Zebo inside. Go ahead, try to stop him. Mark at the high post. Tony Allen's gonna get in your face. Mike Conley's gonna quietly produce a lot. And it was fun to watch.
Lou, I know you got some stuff on Tony Allen because we're real similar with how we view defenders.
Come on. Like it's trick or treat Tony too. Like let's go, because all he was taking was cookies, candy. It's like taking candy from a baby. One of the best defenders across generations, just point blank period. One of the most impactful defenders. It did not matter how, like she said, it didn't matter how bad he fucked up. You knew he was going to get it back and then some. He would get under people's skin. He would annoy the absolute shit out of everybody he guarded and the people he didn't guard too, just because of how much shit he talked. So it was truly just inspiring. He was a 5-time DPOY finalist, never won it. The highest he came was 4th place, which
crazy.
But we digress. It's just one of the most interesting players that you can think of or root for, because he was really the last of the dying breed in terms of 3 no D. I mean, sorry, D no 3.
Hold on.
Yeah, hold up. So I said it backwards because he wasn't really a shooter, and it was like everybody was looking for, even to this day, that's what everybody looks for is 3 and D role player. But with him, it was like he can do other things to impact the game, and he would still have a positive effect. And it was one of the him and Zebo and Conley. Gasol talked a little shit too. I'm not gonna lie, but it was kind of like
he'd say it in Spanish.
Yeah, he would. They just wouldn't understand. Most of the league wouldn't understand. But it was kind of like the yin and the yang to each other. It was like the perfect harmony and balance to just hold everybody together. But man, Tony Allen, sensational player. Is never gonna get any mentions for anything aside from defense, but we know who he was. We know who he was, and we know what he became and what he meant to these teams. Really got there, and him and Zebo really started the whole grit and grind thing there. So it was just meant probably so much to the city, and just in terms of the impact for to make everybody's job easier. And in the playoffs, you knew who he was guarding. Everybody knew who he was guarding, and he would still get stops. It didn't matter. They couldn't screen him. And even if they did, it was he would still let you know about it. He was just completely impactful in every way, did all the little things right, would hustle, grab the offensive rebounds, do the dirty things, the things nobody wanted to do. But that's what he took pride in. And, like Kenny said, real, that's kind of what Chicago, the city is known for. That's Tony Allen is just like the gold star example of Chicago basketball.
Yeah, given the examples real quick, because we did say off like these Chicago players we mentioned, just Pat Bev,
Wade,
Iman Shumpert, Kevin Garnett, just these real tough, gritty, in your face type players, and Tony Allen is definitely 100% like in that mix, and so I just love Chicago players in general, and he's one of my favorite defenders ever. That's as simple as I can put it. Marc Gasol, 2013 Defensive Player of the Year. More of a controversial choice than I personally thought it should have been. I know that's, and even with that, I'm kind of like in the minority in thinking that. I understand LeBron did some incredible things, and even as a Miami Heat fan, I've always felt like whichever way it went, whatever, just because that Memphis defense was so good, and for Marc Gasol to anchor that defense, not even coming into the league as a defender, mind you, just I wasn't too mad at him winning that, but also the skill level of that type of big, it was just kind of ridiculous, especially for the time. Early 2010s, you just didn't see a whole lot of that. But I'm gonna go back around because Marty did say you wanted us to kind of talk first about the players.
Whatever.
I'm gonna go to Lou first this time, just on Marc Gasol, and keeping in mind that he got traded to Memphis kind of as an afterthought. He was just Powell's brother, and I don't know. I'm not good at gauging people's ages and where they were at the time, but Powell was a huge deal with the Grizzlies. I don't know.
Yes.
Obviously, he was a huge deal with the Grizzlies. His brother
star.
comes in, and now Marc is probably beloved more than Powell, I would assume.
I mean, people did not know what the hell they were thinking with that. Yep. They brought in his y'all can start.
Yeah, it was crazy because he was a second round pick. He was like just thrown in like an extra in the deal. Got there and people were like, this guy's 23, 24, hasn't really played NBA minutes. Like, what are we expecting? He's not the best athlete. He's not this. He's not that. But in typical like Marc Gasol fashion, just won them over literally from the moment he stepped on the floor, due to like all the like an expert of doing the little things, the fundamental things to keep your team in it. And in some of the series was the best player, not just on the Grizzlies, on the floor in terms of impact, especially in those playoff series. He was one of the biggest reasons Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan just could not breathe against him and Zebo, the way that they defended, the way that he protected the rim in a non-traditional way, because he didn't really do it with he had block numbers, but it wasn't like just not a flashy guy, but offensively one of the best passing bigs in NBA history. Like, fuck it, I'll say it. I don't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the assist numbers were. If you ever watched, he was one of he averaged like 3-4 assists a game. At least 2.5 to 3 of those were straight entry passes to Zebo in the most exquisite way. Yeah. It was the most beautiful high post, low post. He would be an absolute demon if he played today in the league, like in his prime. Like
it was like Jokic, but like not as good as Jokic.
It was like Jokic with like light. Jokic probably imitated his game, if we're being very honest.
Yeah.
Or probably took inspiration from it, but like he wasn't like your traditional center. He wasn't banging down there in terms of rebounds or he was a way better passer. He would space the floor a lot more than typical centers would in the day, but he would still post you up. Very super like high skilled, low turnover, high assist center, and just dominated for years on that team. And originally brought there to just be like a little throw into the deal, and ended up being a 3-time All-Star for this franchise.
Frankie?
Man, Mark is one of my faves. I love the high post passing bigs. I've always been a big fan of those kind of players. And he was just a demon there, like just running, put him at the free throw line, let him be big and just drop off the ball to Tony Allen on a cut, Mike Conley on a cut, Rudy, all these guys. And so smart, just buttery touch from the for the free throw line jumper. It was no surprise to anyone who watched him that he eventually developed into a capable 3-point shooter. And a lot of coaches were always just like, shoot more, man. Like, you're good. You're really good. That was always the constant struggle with him. But defensively, just a monster, just communication, big size, mobility. You couldn't bully him inside. You couldn't out scheme him. You couldn't play around with him. It doesn't matter. He was capable. He was communicating, and he would tunnel him out to Tony Allen and Mike Conley, push him back out to the perimeter. And he was just an incredibly fun guy to watch, like in the little scheme of basketball, just a little tiny thing. Like, he wasn't going to get 15 blocks in a game. He wasn't going to do anything crazy like that numbers wise. But if you're watching it possession by possession, you're seeing him communicate. You're seeing him bother guys and get rebounds and box out and do all the important things that make the difference between winning and losing. I've never seen somebody bother Tim Duncan like Marc Gasol did in the playoffs. One of the 8-1 upsets that we didn't even get to talk about was 2011 Memphis Grizzlies upsetting the Spurs in the first round. That was really the start of the grit and grind era, just where they became capable, and that was big part of Mark, like him breaking out and setting the tone defensively on Tim and bothering them. But man, just an unbelievable player to watch, and such a unique player that I really feel like is underappreciated in this kind of from that era.
Molly?
Oh, has everyone gone?
Yeah.
I didn't know if you had gone yet.
No, I said a little bit. I'm just hosting today.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, once again, you guys nailed all of that stuff. Mark is amazing. He, like we've said, he was the passing big man. He was really, like, I think you mentioned, like, he was the best player for, like, there were times that you look and, like, that's the best player on the court, and a lot of people don't realize that. And his whole story, just going from, he actually went to high school in Memphis. I'm sure everyone's seen that picture now of, like, the younger chubby Mark. It got, like, so just overused, but he came to Memphis, and for him to end up back in Memphis, it was just so cool. And, like, once again, it fits that theme of these guys who are kind of cast away by other teams who no one really expected anything of. Everyone's like, oh, Mark, this is Pau Gasol's, like, out of shape younger brother. Like, what the hell is he gonna do? And he just comes and just completely evolves into this incredible big man in the league. And there were times that I wanted him to be more physical. I almost feel like he didn't reach his ceiling. But that's not a testament to, like, how incredible he was. He was like, just, all these guys were just so important, and they just had their roles. And yeah, I mean, who doesn't love the Gasol brothers? I love Mark. Yeah, he's awesome.
Zach Randolph. Now,
yeah. Exactly. I like how y'all saved him for last.
So my experience with Zach Randolph, I was watching when he was on the Blazers teams, and I remember him breaking out after Rasheed Wallace left. And obviously very good player, but that team couldn't stay out of trouble with the law. Me and Lou talked about that on an early episode. He ends up going to New York. That team, especially at the time, was like, the organization was a dumpster fire. He played well, but whatever. Then he goes to the Clippers, plays pretty well there also, sort of. But then they draft Blake Griffin and have no room for him. And he lands in Memphis. Now, my first memory of him in Memphis is him torching San Antonio in the playoff game. And I was like, oh, it felt vindicating, because he had been kind of just under the radar for a few years. And I was like, oh, okay, Zach Randolph got my attention again. And I know Marty has a ton to say about him, so I'm going to just go to Frankie first on Zach Randolph, and, like, your experiences just seeing him.
You mentioned him on the Clippers and the Knicks, and I was just like, all right, this guy like puts up numbers, but like, what does he do? Like, it's just empty calories. He was part of that summer. He was one of the many Quentin Richardson trades in that summer that ended up with Quentin Richardson. He was traded like 5 times, and he ended up in Miami. So I remember that. But I hadn't realized that was the trade that, you know, freed up the power forward spot for Blake Griffin and sent Zach Randolph to Memphis and really like started off that era. But you know, like on the court, man, just a bully, just a flat out bully, a throwback, hard-nosed player, tough as can be. And Molly mentioned him choking out Blake Griffin, and just like that was one guy nobody ever wanted to mess with, and it was clear like he was one of those it's him and Tony Allen where we're just like, all right, we're gonna punk this guy tonight and we're gonna punk this guy this series, let's go, come on. And but on the court, man, he was one of the most interesting players to watch. Just his footwork, his size, his strength, his touch. He was like the king of the pivot foot. Just like inside spin move, fake, duck around, reverse layup, and you're just like, God damn it, this guy moves so gracefully for being 280 pounds.
Crazy.
He was so fun to watch, man. I like, he's such a throwback player. Like I really loved just the contrast between him and Mark, where Zach is like yelling, smacking the ball and celebrating and shit, picking up texts, and Mark is like,
yeah.
It was great, man. I miss Zebo so much.
Oh, I miss him every day.
Lou?
Oh man, talk about one of the few times Tim Duncan has been put through the ringer offensively was against Zebo. I guess he had never encountered somebody like this in a playoff series up until this point, because he put the work on him. Like, it was like 22 points a game, which now is like the number 48 scorer in the league. That's the way basketball's changed. But back then, 22 is like 31 now. So just think of it kind of like that, like 28, 31 now. And he was just, we know exactly what he was going to do the whole game, and people could not stop it. It didn't matter. He was a much better passer than people give him credit for, not in terms of his assist, but just in terms of like sometimes not forcing. And when it was time to force, it was when he got like really like, they got under his skin to a certain point. He was like, all right, fuck it. It's go time. It's Zebo time. And just truly sensational as a person, as a character. A little fun like side story. One of my favorite players ever by far. I made my first 3 2K builds after Zebo. I tried to make really big players who could move really well, pivot in the post, and it was the most fun I ever had on 2K. And that was all literally thanks to Zebo.
So, as far as Molly goes, and as far as Zebo, now I understand, even from the outside looking in, a little bit of Zebo's impact on Memphis, not only on the basketball court, which I'm sure Marty has stuff about, but in the city as well. Even just from the community stuff, there's that famous video of him walking out of the tunnel and like touching the kid's hand. To a lot of people don't know, discovering Moneybag Yo.
Yeah.
Just like, so I really want Marty to get into Zebo on and off the floor.
Oh man, you guys did save the best for last, because Zebo, like, for me, it's all of them, but it's him. Like, he is what made me fall in love with basketball. He comes in to the Grizzlies, right, as another player who's been casted away. The Blazers, everyone was like, oh, this guy, he's no good. There's not really a place for him. He's not going to contribute anything. To go from that to having an impeccable reputation in a city to doing so much good, completely like changing the city. I mean, this is a city that's never had a professional sports team, right? Come in and bring the joy that he brought. And his game was it was unlike anything. When he was in the paint, everyone just held their breath and just watched. He would move several times. You just knew, it's like the definition of like, let him cook. Like, he was going to get his buckets. He could not jump. It didn't matter. He was going to move his body in the right way, and he was going to destroy your team. And it was just so inevitable, and it was so beautiful. And I mean, yeah, he just completely immersed himself in the community. His style of play was grit and grind all the way. The way he was just going to be fed in a moment, it was always feed 50, get the ball to Zebo. And you just kind of laugh as you watch him do it, because it's like, how is this guy doing what he's doing? But he always did it. And he always had a smile on his face. When he came to the Grizzlies, he said, he was asked, you know, about his reputation, about what people say about him. And he just said, all I want is one day for someone to write a good story about me, and for him to just go in and become the most beloved player the franchise had ever seen. It just represents, you know, Memphis, a city that a lot of people don't believe in. And then you have this player who a lot of people don't believe in, and they had a perfect marriage and they made it work. And yeah, he's the best. Everyone from Memphis, in terms of him being kind and so nice, everyone has a Zebo story. I have a Zebo story. I saw him at a gas station and was like, hey, Zebo, like, I run this Twitter account. Like, just like, why not? And he stood, had a several minute long conversation with me, and he did not need to do that, but that's just the kind of guy he is. He's always making time for people, and it's genuine. I mean, you could tell that he really wanted to. And you know, I didn't get into it with Marc. They're all like that, but Marc, same thing. Seriously, one of the kindest players that I've ever met. When I would see him, you know, he would say, "Oh, it's so good to see you again." He would just be so engaging, and I'm like, "You don't know me, but like you've seen me, right?" Because like back then, like you could sit up there. The prices to sit behind the Grizzlies bench are like insane compared to like other cities. So that is an investment that, you know, we decided to make. And, you know, he'd seen my face, but he didn't know me. And so but still, like, these guys just like, they were so integrated in the community, and they never acted like they were celebrities, because there was just this mutual respect. It's like, you're not going to crowd them, you know, you're going to say what's up, they're gonna say what's up, and everyone's gonna go about their day. Yeah, they're just a really beautiful era of basketball that really brought life to a city that needed it. And when people look back, you know, there was never a championship won, but it like almost felt like there was, just because of how much it meant. And yeah, it's something that is shaped me into the sports fan I am today, into the person I know. But yeah, it's grit and grind is really special, and I think it's cool that you guys are shining light on it as non-Grizzlies fans. I feel like there needs to be a second combo about the 8 seed beating the 1 seed.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No worries. Do y'all want to like ask a question? No, I just want. Okay. Yeah. So grit and grind started because the 8-seeded Grizzlies beat the number 1 seeded San Antonio Spurs. No one saw that coming, and in that, the phrase "believe Memphis" started, and people had these growl towels that they would hold up, and they literally just said "believe Memphis," and that was a trend that followed along every year. It was grit and grind, and it was "believe Memphis," because somehow this team that didn't have any flashy superstars was just continuously giving these elite teams, you know, the Thunder, the Clippers, Lob City, right? So much trouble in the playoffs. The Spurs, by the way, never let the Grizzlies forget it. They got that win, and the Spurs pop was like, they are never going to beat us again. And that ended up being the downfall of the Grizzlies, right? I mean, these teams ended up learning how to stop them, which was they don't have anyone in the perimeter who we need to guard. It's all Zebo, right? This is the guy we need to stop. So yeah, it was, as we said, it was the last dying breath of a type of basketball, and they never got that elite shooter that they needed to really space the floor. But they were always doing it. They were always almost there. There were things that would happen. For me, what haunts me is Zach Randolph in 2014 being suspended in Game 7 when against Steven Adams. Hilarious because Grizzlies fans hated him, but of course now we all love him. Still can't believe he's like not on the team. It's weird when a player doesn't play and then they get traded, and it's like, anyway. They had chances and they were always just proving people wrong. They were defying odds from the very first series. It was Believe Memphis, and that was what the team embodied. It was just a city believing in these guys who were misfits and who had been discarded, who weren't believed in, and it was really cool. I wish we had a ring to show for it, but sometimes the good guys don't win. But anyway,
guys finish last.
I feel like
I think that kind of goes into something me and Lou talk about all the time as far as ring culture. Like, kind of, I don't want to go on. Yeah, I don't want to go on a whole rant about it, but it just leaves a lot of great teams and great players being overlooked. Yeah. And I just, none of us really feel like that should be the case.
For sure.
And,
like as Heat fans, like, you know, we're fortunate enough to have like, you know, not to rub it in, Molly, but we've seen our team win the championship. But like some of my favorite teams didn't win. Like
even Heat teams themselves.
Like some of my favorite Heat teams are the ones that didn't win, that lost in the second round or whatever. And I don't care because I had so much fun watching that team. Yeah. They're all, you know, you have fun watching the personalities, the players, the coaches. Like you remember games and moments, and like that's really what like we fall in love with sports about. Like that's where we have the most joy. It's the championships are great, you know, like, and that's all fun, but like I'll take that 03-04 Heat team over like so many teams that did so much better. And it's just because of little things like, you know, you remember the moments. You remember Zebo choking out Blake Griffin. You're like, yeah, I hate that guy. Choke him. you're remembering Tony Allen steal and breakaway dunk to ice the game. You're remembering stuff like that, and it's just big moments. Like the Spurs series. Yeah, when you're the 8th seed and you upset the team, the favorite right there. Especially when no one's guessing that you are going to do that. No one's predicting it. It's not like an injury thing.
Spurs, like
they had never won a playoff game in franchise history. Even Vancouver, like never. So we just wanted to win a game. Like literally, fans were like, let's take one. Win a game. Let's win a game. And then it was like, okay, let's win 2 games. And it was like, oh my God, are we going to do this?
No, it's those kind of that was one of the big surprises to me because Zebo, you know, that was his breakout series where he just dominated the Spurs. Like Lou talked about, like they couldn't do anything with him, and him just finding gaps to attack and just like, God damn, this guy again. You can see the frustration on the Spurs face, which you know, respect the Spurs, but I loved seeing them frustrated because they were so annoying. And you know, you see Darrell Arthur, big moment. Shane Battier had a great series against them, and we're huge Shane fans. Like love those grit and grind era.
High IQ players just hold a special place. And just I think it should be in the heart of many basketball fans, to be very honest. I think the diehards really, really appreciate the players who do all the little things correctly. And you know, to your point, like the way that they started against that San Antonio team, where they took them to after beating them, and then obviously what ended up happening throughout the years, it's unfortunate. I have one last question to ask Molly, if you don't mind. Like, what year did you feel like that was your best opportunity to take it all the way?
2014, the year that Zebo got suspended in Game 7. Yeah, for me, that was the year. Also, the following year, when Mike got hurt by Golden State.
Yeah,
that year too. So, yeah, because like it wasn't gonna happen, you know, that first but like there was like after a couple of years when it was like, okay, these guys can do this. I just feel like as all teams do, there are are bad breaks, right? There are injuries, suspensions.
Happens.
Yeah, there was like a weird like Nick Calathis, who was one of our backup point guards. He got like this weird like it was like a hair growth pill that he was taking or something. Don't quote me on that, guys. Please Google it if you're listening to this. And he got suspended. So just like weird stuff always happens. But yeah, there was definitely a couple years that like we really could have done it, I think. And that's gonna haunt me for the rest of my life. But hey, well, hopefully the John Moran will get us a ring and I can sleep at night.
Yeah, I was actually just about to ask that because we're in a situation now where the league, it looks like it's about to really change and really shift. LeBron James is still LeBron James, Steph is still Steph, but their teams are struggling, and their teams have struggled for a couple years. And so we know there's a new generation coming in. And we spoke at the beginning of the show about how shouldn't be as quiet as it is, but Memphis, when healthy, is one of the best teams in the NBA. So do you feel like once they get healthy, they're pretty close to getting fully there? Because I don't really see a reason why not.
Yeah, no, they are. That's like, period.
Point blank period. Talking shit. I agree.
There's no, yeah. I mean, I think that the Grizzlies could have, beat the Warriors if Ja hadn't gotten hurt last time when they won that weird championship that I still can't believe that they won. Yeah, I thought we could have done it that year. And you know, we did have like a different depth then that was good. You know, we had Kyle Anderson, who Timberwolves fans like hate, which is crazy because like
crazy. Slow-mo's a king.
Yeah, we had him. You know, we had D'Anthony Melton, but he really wasn't a big playoff guy who showed up in the playoffs. So that's why it felt like we could move away from him. But yeah, I mean, our core is as good as any. So I think right now, yeah, it's about adding the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th guys, figuring out who those guys are, and we're healthy. Obviously, right now the center position is a little bit of a question mark. We did have Steven Adams. That's huge. But we'll figure it out.
I think you guys will. I think you guys will be happy, considering where you guys kind of are falling into this draft. There's like one specific center that if you get, you should be like, oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Because we are like a couple months away. Because we're gonna do draft coverage pretty early. So who is that center?
It's Bobby Klingman for UConn. If Molly, you will have so many answers as soon as because he's like 7'2", 280. But like first of all, screen setting elite, and defense mobility elite. Him and Jaren would terrorize teams, and I literally think it's unfortunate Steven Adams isn't on your team because one of the easiest players in the league to root for, point blank period. And you know, it's obviously filling a void. But if you're able to get 70% of the production on a rookie contract, shit, you guys are an issue without Steven just due to Ja being on the team and Bane and Jaren and all these leaps that we've talked about from the rookies. If you get him, my goodness gracious. Look out.
Awesome. Yeah. Can't wait. I mean, I've heard this is like a shitty draft, but once I know
it's a role player draft. So what you need is a role playing center.
Yeah. The Grizzlies don't need a star right now, so that would be perfect.
Yeah, no, exactly. Once I like know what pick, my dad keeps being like, you need to read up on all the players. And I'm like, once we know what pick we are, I'm gonna lock in. But yeah, I'm just enjoying March Madness right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Keeping an eye out. Go Vols, hopefully. Just gotta throw that in there.
I like that kid from Tennessee, Dalton. He's nice. Yeah, he's a hooper. Yeah, no, it's I feel like this Memphis team, like I'm a huge Desmond Bane fan, and I feel like they're a couple pieces away. You know, Brandon Clark coming back, you know, Marcus and Ja coming back. That's that nasty duo, and you got Bane, you got Vince breaking out, you got GG, hopefully keep improving. Jaren, and I feel like these reps, and this year for Jaren has been so key because he had a lot of question marks as the sole big. You know, he got exposed a little bit with Team USA.
Let's not talk about that.
But you know, he learned a lot. His passing's grown. He's had to play differently, and it's kind of helped him work on those weaknesses where he probably wouldn't have these opportunities in a regular season where everyone's healthy and they're going for it and you guys are trying to win. And so I think this, not just for the draft pick and stuff, and not just for Vince and Gigi, guys like that, but for Jaren, I think the season's been really crucial for his development as a shooter, as a scorer,
Totally.
developing his all-around game I can't wait to see Ja get back. He was that first night he came back. Oh my God. Dynamite performance.
The most electric player in the NBA.
Easily.
I don't think that's even a competition.
No.
But he is by far one of the most ridiculous athletes.
And people just forget though, because that's what people think of when they think of him. But people forget how effing good he is.
It's not just the athleticism; it's how good he is. Mashed in a perfect marriage. I call him controlled chaos when he's on the floor.
Yeah.
Just because he looks like he doesn't know. Not that he doesn't know. He looks like he shouldn't know what the hell he's doing. But every little screen that he navigates, he gets to the soft spot, gets to the floater. His explosiveness, he's a good pass man. Ja was one of my biggest draft crushes, so I don't have enough good things to say about him. So
yeah,
little Tasmanian devil.
You have too many good things to say about him.
Too many good things. Ja for MVP.
Wait, is
next
that
year.
or were you right? I was trying to help you. I think you actually were right. I don't. Okay, ignore me. It's late.
It's all good.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Playoff File. I'm Kenny. You can follow me on social media if you like, Kenny Spence NBA. But I really care about you just subscribing to Playoff File. Frankie, where can they find you?
Frankie G _ on Twitter. That's Frankie with a Y. Make sure to follow Molly on TikTok and on her socials. Her TikTok is so funny with the she recaps all the drama in the NBA. She has a little countdown. It's been 0 days since the NBA has been unnecessarily dramatic, and she does a great job retelling all the ifs and whats of the NBA season.
Lou, where can they find you?
It's gonna be at Saucy Takes with a Z at the end on mostly Twitter. Just follow me on Twitter.
And Molly, where can they find you?
Yeah, thank you for the TikTok shout. I'm Molly Hannah M on Twitter and TikTok, and then my Instagram is Molly _ Morrison. Should probably have the same username on everything, but oh well.
That being said, if you like the music throughout, that's my brother. His Instagram is BlackGlowMusic. That being said, we'll see y'all next time.